Hi, Tavola Timberwolves. I hope everybody is safe and well and wonderful today. And I have a book to share with you. It is called The Best Nest, and it's by P.D. Eastman. I'm pretty sure I read this book when I was a kid and enjoyed it. And yeah, that means it's kind of an old book. But it's a good one. And I chose it because, you know, we're all kind of stuck in our own nest right now. We've been there a while. But this book reminds us to appreciate the nest that we're in. So, The Best Nest by P.D. Eastman. And it's The Best Nest written and illustrated by P.D. Eastman. So they not only wrote the words, they drew the pictures too. They were busy working on this book. Mr. Bird was happy. He was so happy he had to sing. This was Mr. Bird's song. I love my nest, I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, my nest is best. He's a beautiful singing voice, doesn't he? Tell you what. Then Mrs. Bird came out of the house. It is not the best nest, she said. I'm tired of this old place, said Mrs. Bird. I hate it. Let's look for a new place right now. So they left the old place to look for a new one. This place looks nice, said Mr. Bird. Let's move in here. Yeah, maybe that'll work. But somebody else had already moved in, and that raccoon does not look happy. So they looked at another house. This one looks nice, said Mr. Bird, and there's nobody in it. You're wrong, said Mrs. Bird. This house belongs to a foot. So they went on looking. I like this one, said Mr. Bird. It has a pretty red flag on the roof. I've always wanted a house with a flag, said Mrs. Bird. Maybe this place will be all right. I don't know, I see something coming down the road. But it was not all right. I guess I made a mistake, said Mr. Bird. You make too many mistakes, said Mrs. Bird. I'm going to pick the next house. And here it is, right here. They flew in. They looked around. Isn't it too big? Asked Mr. Bird. I like this big place, said Mrs. Bird. This is the place to build our new nest. They went right to work. They needed many things to build their nest. First, they got some hay. They got some soda straws. I don't think she's very happy about that. And broom straws. They got some sweater string, which I'm wondering if they could have waited till the guy was not wearing the sweater or something. They got some stocking string, I think they mean socks, and mattress stuffing. They got some horsehair. They got some man hair. Then they had all the hay, all the straw, all the string, all the stuffing, all the horsehair, and all the man hair they could carry. They took it all back to build their nest. Mr. and Mrs. Bird worked very hard. It took them the rest of the morning to finish their nest. This nest is really the best, said Mrs. Bird. I want to stay here forever. Mr. Bird was very happy too. He flew to the top of his house. He sang his song again. I love our house, I love our nest. In all the world, our nest is best. He was so busy singing, he didn't even see Mr. Parker coming. What is Mr. Parker's plan here? Every day at 12 o'clock, Mr. Parker came to church. Mr. Parker came to pull a rope. The rope went up to the bird's nest. Look what it does up there. The rope rang the big bell right under Mrs. Bird's nest. Bong, bong, bong. That would be loud. Mrs. Bird got out of there as fast as she could fly. And it's still going bong, 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 bong. When Mr. Bird came in, all he could see was a mess of hay and string and stuffing and horsehair and manhair and straws. Where was Mrs. Bird? I will look for her until I find her, said Mr. Bird. He looked high, he looked low, he looked everywhere for Mrs. Bird. Where could she be? He looked down into a chimney, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. He looked down into a water barrel, but Mrs. Bird wasn't there. Then he saw a big fat cat. There was a big fat smile on that fat cat's face. There were some pretty brown feathers near the fat cat's mouth. Mr. Bird began to cry. Oh dear, he cried. This big fat cat has eaten Mrs. Bird. Oh no. Mr. Bird flew off. I'll never see Mrs. Bird again, he cried. It was getting dark. It began to rain. It rained harder and harder. Mr. Bird could not see where he was going. Crash! Mr. Bird bumped into something. It was his old house, that old house that Mrs. Bird hated. I'll go inside, said Mr. Bird. I'll rest here until the rain stops. Mr. Bird went in, and there was Mrs. Bird, sitting there singing. I love my house, I love my nest. In all the world, this nest is best. You? Here? Gasped Mr. Bird. I thought you hated this old nest. Mrs. Bird smiled. I used to hate it, she said, but a mother bird can change her mind. You see, there's no nest like an old nest for a brand new bird. Look at what's in their nest there. And when the egg popped open, the new bird thought so too. And that's the end. I hope you enjoyed my story today, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye.